Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Noontime here at the FTN Network. I'm Ryan Noonan, and I am back after a little bit of a break here from football season. I'm ready to really get into the heart of what I wanted to do with this show, and that's bringing on some of the best in the business in their field to talk about what's going on in the moment. And there's a lot going on in sports, right? We have a ton in the NFL free agency news. Patriots are spending like they got 6, 7 different stimulus checks. We got lots of good stuff going on in the world of golf that I'd love to talk about, but there is nothing more relevant than what's going on this week. It is NCAA tournament time, and I brought on the best of the business that we have here at FTN. Man, we got some other really sharp college hoops guys, but Mike is doubling the field in terms of units won this season. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ryan, and I appreciate the introduction. I mean, that was really nice of you. But yeah, I mean, it's the best time of the year. We finally made it to March. I mean, after a 1-year hiatus, so it feels a little sweeter this year to finally get here. And I'm just I'm buzzing right now. It's literally my Christmas, and I couldn't be happier. And I'm happy to be on the show to talk hoops with you.
Yeah, I don't want to out Mike, but Mike he handled this like a champ this week. The dude took the week off to prep for the week. Like, you're not getting half takes here. You're not getting any lukewarm stuff. The dude is home grinding to get ready for any edge he can find for your bets. Mike is a player prop machine. We're going to fill out a bracket and, go a little deeper on first round stuff, because obviously those are the, matchups that we have that we know are guaranteed to be able to break down. But yeah, we're giving you the top shelf stuff here this week. So before we really dig into matchups, Mike, I just kind of want to get your philosophy as it relates to filling out a bracket, right? So there's a lot of, bracket integrity. Are you a one bracket guy? Are you a multi-bracket guy? Do you have any game theory? Because I know you're also a big DFS guy. Is there any game theory as far as filling out a bracket for you? Or are you like, I'm just going to pick, as the numbers dictate, as the matchups dictate? How do you approach it?
Well, to be honest with you, I am just a one bracket filler kind of guy. I kind of just like to have one take on each game, because for me to enjoy the tournament, right? Because like this is kind of the culmination of the whole year. I grind so much throughout the whole year. I mean, college basketball is different than something like NBA, where you have 32 teams to follow. You have 350 plus teams to follow. So for me to actually enjoy the actual tournament, I like to just fill out one bracket. So I kind of have like a side route for each time, because when you get into the space where you're filling out 10, 20, 30, 50 brackets, right? It's like you don't even know who to root for anymore. It kind of just gets a little muddled in there. So just from like a pure enjoyment standpoint, I'm more of a one bracket guy. When you start to ramp up and start to do more brackets, that's when you get into the intense game theory. It's like, okay, what leverage spots do I want to make? ESPN comes out throughout the week on percentages of what people or teams they're taking. So you kind of want to dive really heavy into that and see, okay, if everybody's picking Gonzaga at 40% to win, I definitely want to do contrarian view and take some leverage spots that I can get low ownership. Similar theory to GPP DFS, where you want to be low ownership and have high leverage spots on the field. Actually, one of the college basketball capping experts over at FTN, John Fendler, just put out a couple tweets today breaking down some game theory and leverage spots he really likes if you're filling out multiple brackets. I would encourage people listening to follow him on Twitter and take a look, because he has some really good insights on if you're filling out multiple brackets. But for me, I'm more into the capping, less into the trying to make money off my brackets. I just really enjoy filling out, just because everything all the hard work and the thousands of games that I follow when I'm watching North Texas on ESPN Plus 5 times this year, when no one else is. It kind of makes it come to fruition.
Love it.
Anytime. Yeah.
You want to be right.
Exactly.
And you locked in on it, and you were right. Like you said, you don't want to have to get into like, all right, I need this to happen in this one, but it's actually not really what I think is going to happen, but it's my best bracket. It's live. Like, it gets wonky. But yeah, good shout out to what's going on over at FTN Bets too. I know you were really pivotal in the scouting guide that we just came out with. If you're not familiar, you're going to head over to ftnbets.com /pricing. You'll be able to find that scouting guide, or you can find it on the link there too. $7.95. It's like $7.95 is just a joke. Like
just skip lunch one day and and just buy it.
You're spending $20 on your pool, or even if you're not betting anything else during the 3 weeks here, that is absolutely going to pay for itself automatically. And like you said, we have some of the best in the business doing this, so definitely head over there and check that out. But let's get into it. We won't waste any time. We'll start in the West, work our way through. We'll finish the West region, and then we'll work on to the next one. So I got my screen here. Do you guys need me to share my screen? I apologize. I should have asked this here before we.
Yep. Ryan, just share the screen and we'll be good to go.
All right. We're going to fill out this bracket here. We will start with Gonzaga. We know we have a little playing game, obviously, there with Norfolk and Appalachian State. That's going on early in the week. That is, I believe, going on Thursday, with App State being 3-point favorites there against Norfolk. Obviously, I think we feel pretty confident that Gonzaga is going to move on. But for the listeners, do we have any thoughts around Norfolk State and App State, Mike?
Yeah, I actually tweeted my thoughts out early this morning, kind of capping this game. Like you said, App State's 3-point favorites. I do like App State, even with the giving the 3 points. They have just much better guard play than Norfolk State. Norfolk State, where they really make teams uncomfortable, is that they press a lot and they try to force a lot of turnovers. Where App State, what their strength is they have really experienced and high-level guard play that Norfolk State probably hasn't seen all year. I think they'll be a little uncomfortable in the beginning of the game, but as the game goes on, they'll handle the pressure pretty well, and they'll be able to pull away late. And I have App State moving on to, unfortunately, I have to play Gonzaga. I mean, App State's actually they came out of the Sunday. They're a pretty good team and are probably a little underseeded. I don't think they deserve a 16. But, obviously they run into juggernaut Gonzaga, best offense in the country, undefeated. And there's not much to talk about. It's, Gonzaga's going to move on to the second round.
Not much to talk about there for sure. Interested to get your thoughts on Gonzaga as we move along. Next is the 8-9 line with Oklahoma against Missouri. Oklahoma's had some good wins. Alabama, Kansas, Texas, West Virginia, like those are teams that are all up here, at 3-lined and shorter here. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so this one's tough for me because, before the field was set on Sunday, I had an idea of fading both of these squads. And of course, we get them matched up here at an 8-9 seed. But, like you said, Oklahoma at one point of the season, kind of like late January, early February, was looking really, really good. They strung together a lot of wins in a row. And they got themselves up into the top 10 of the AP poll. So they were looking really good. And then they sort of stumbled down the stretch. They lost 5 of their last 6. When you're looking at your bracket and you're trying to pick teams to advance, you want to stick around teams that are playing their best basketball of the season. And Oklahoma is not one of them, right? They're kind of stumbled down the stretch. Right, like a perfect example is the years UConn won with Kemba Walker and Shabazz Napier, where they were just playing their best basketball at the time, and they ended up going all the way to the finals, winning it all. Oklahoma's the complete opposite of that right now. They're not looking too good. On the Missouri side, I really, really like this team. I like them all year. I've been kind of pounding their drum ever since the start. I actually have a 300-1 future on them to win the whole thing, which is great value right now. And they do have a ton of talent. They have the makeup to beat any team in the country, but they're also at the same time the most frustrating team in the country, right? And what it comes down to is this team doesn't really have any identity, right? They can't close out close games, right? They have a really inconsistent rotation where guys are getting different minutes, can't really get into a rhythm, and they foul a ton at an alarming rate. So a lot of their best players typically get in foul trouble. What this game comes down to me is, since there's so many different variables, both teams really aren't playing that well right now, is going to come down to coaching. And I just more respect and trust in Lon Kruger than Quanzo Martin. So I'm going to have Oklahoma moving on to the next round.
Oklahoma. Look at that. Like an 8-9. I mean, Dude can go for 10 minutes if I let him. Great. Now we're moving on to another club that I know you're very familiar with, because I have made plenty of dollars off of Creighton Blue Jay props this season, because just tailing you. So Creighton 7-point favorites here against UC Santa Barbara, obviously coming off of a really bad loss. How do you weight that, and what are your thoughts on this one?
So this is a juicy one. We got right now we're going into the first upset picks of what I have so far. And like you said, the thing with Creighton is that, I mean, they're a very good team. They're actually very much better defensively than they usually are this year. But they're very jump shot reliant, which makes them very inconsistent, right? So you can have very great performances, ceiling performances, or very low floor performances. And they typically have those floor performances when they run into length. Georgetown is a really good example, where Georgetown has a lot of length. That's kind of how they made their run in the Big East tournament. Creighton lost them twice this year. And Santa Barbara has a ton of length. They run defenses off the 3-point line, which is Creighton likes to shoot threes. And they like to limit ball movement and kind of force teams into more like ISO heavy offenses. And that's kind of a big flaw in Creighton's game, where they like to move the ball around, get open shots, and Santa Barbara's going to take that away. What it's going to come down to is, can Santa Barbara's playmakers make enough plays on offense to score more? And I think they can. You got Ja'Cory McLaughlin, who's a transfer coming into Santa Barbara. He's one of the better mid-major guards in the country, and they got a pretty dominant force and so down low. A big question mark is their best shooter. He hurt himself in the Big West final. It's looking like he's going to play. If he's not going to play, that kind of, I don't know if it takes me off of them, but it does limit things a little bit. But I think Santa Barbara is a bad matchup for Creighton enough that they can pull up the upset here. So I'm going to have UCSB move on in the second round.
UCSB, classic.
Yeah. And another thing I want to mention, Ryan, is that, like, Creighton had that whole kind of scandal going on with McDermott. We don't know how much hangover is going to be coming on with that. So that's another thing that's in the back of your mind when you're capping this game.
Nice. No, that's a good call for sure. And McLaughlin can score it. So like you said, that's a tough matchup for them. So it'll be pretty interesting. Obviously, bad momentum heading in after getting just absolutely boat raced by Georgetown. This next one is a pretty trendy upset special as well. And I know the line has moved from where it opened. We have Virginia against Ohio. Virginia obviously dealing with some COVID issues. We don't really know the extent of that here. But there's a fun one to watch on Ohio. I know Jason Preston is a lot of fun. Any thoughts here on the trendy upset pick of Ohio here against Virginia?
Yeah, so a lot of people are picking this as one of their upset specials, and for good reason, obviously. I'm more of a contrarian type of guy, so as the show goes on, you'll see me kind of going against the grain a little bit, but I can't do it in this one. I'm kind of in an agreement with everybody, and it's just that Virginia has so many things going against them in this matchup. I mean, like you mentioned, they've been on COVID pause. They're not going to practice before this game, which is huge, and we've seen that throughout the year where majority of teams, there are some exceptions, but majority of teams coming off COVID pause play their worst basketball this season. And Virginia's an open book. You know that they play at a snail's pace. They know that they're going to try to be very efficient on offense, but how efficient are they going to be coming off COVID pause? And Tony Bennett's pack line defense, you typically see Virginia in the top 10, top 5 defense efficiency in the country, and this year they're just not. Right? I think they're ranked outside of the 30 in defensive efficiency, which is not typical of a Tony Bennett Virginia team. And then on the other side, Ohio, I mean, they are a juggernaut on offense. They can score from anywhere. They shoot a ton of threes. They shoot threes at a high clip. That's how you beat a pack line defense. And they have a bona fide star in Jason Preston, who could go out and score, get a triple-double whenever he wants. We saw that when they came really close to beating Illinois early in the season this year. So the only thing that you have it going against Ohio is that their defense isn't great, but to counteract that, you don't know how good Virginia or Chris they're going to be on offense coming out of that COVID pause. So for me, I think everybody is on the right side here. I think Virginia has just way too many things going against them, and I have the upset as well. I have Ohio going to the next round.
Hi, we got a 12-13 round 2 matchup here.
Yeah, we're starting off hot here
Love to see
in the
it.
West.
Preston's on my radar just as an NBA guy because this is definitely someone that looks like, a first round pick in the draft and has definite, skills that are going to translate to the next level. So he's going to be a fun one to watch. I know, a lot of people that are, maybe NBA guys that are, get into the tournaments, probably similar to me, get in, a few weeks as we're getting into conference tournament season, and you want to look at, all right, who do I need to watch that's going to be, popping on the next level going, early in the draft. And Preston is definitely one of these guys.
Yeah, and if they win, his stock's only going to go up, right?
What's that?
If they win, his stock's only going to go up. You see that happen all the time.
For
you
sure.
have these guys who, have a lot of potential, but maybe don't really perform that well during the season. And then they have 2 really good games in the tournament. You see them automatically become a lottery pick out of nowhere. It happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely one, which, makes this game fun because I know sometimes watching basketball is not very aesthetically pleasing. They do not play. I believe they're the slowest paced team in the league or in the Division I, if I'm not mistaken. Like they are not super exciting at times. So, having someone that's a little fun on the other side makes it a little worthwhile. All right, we got a professional here transition. We got another top line NBA products here. USC Trojans. Obviously, they are no number on this yet because we have a play-in game between Wichita State and the Drake Bulldogs. Thoughts on that matchup early in the week?
Yeah, so for the play-in game, I think Wichita's a small favorite, which I think Vegas has the wrong side favored here. The thing with this game is that I think it's shot quality, right? So Wichita has more talented guard play for sure, but they take such bad shots at times. And Drake is coached very well. They're going to press Wichita a little bit. That's going to make them a little out of their comfort zone. And their offense is heavy pick and roll, a lot of backdoor cuts. I just think that the poise and the way that Drake is coached versus Wichita, they've had an incredible year and they have guys who can really make plays, but I'd rather have a much more efficient offense than just rely on a couple guys that can make plays come tournament. And they have a brand new interim coach this year who's a little green. They do seem a little disjointed at points. So I'm taking the Drake side. I think Drake's going to move on it and fight and face your boy, Evan Mobley, and the Trojans in the first round.
Yeah, this is another obvious, Pac-10 player of the year, freshman of the year, defensive player of the year. I mean, just, turn on a USC game and you have to watch it for, all of 30 seconds for you to, have him jump off the screen. Feel pretty confident that they're moving on here.
Yeah, I mean, he's the real deal. USC is top 5 in the country in size. I think it's really going to disrupt Drake's offense. Yeah, I mean, Mobley brothers are legit. Their guard play is a little suspect at times. It's mostly composed of transfers, which I think limits their ceiling. But, Andy Enfield has USC playing the best defense they've ever played for him. And I think that'll be enough in this matchup for them to move on.
All right, we're moving on with the Trojans. Next, we have number 3 seed, Kansas Jayhawks. They are 10.5-point favorites against Eastern Kentucky. This is, not your typical Kansas team, though they are still a 3 seed. I don't know that they are necessarily the Kansas that we've seen in years past, but I'd love to get your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of question marks in this one on the Kansas side because they also are coming off of COVID pause. And we just got word, I think yesterday or this morning, that one of their best players, Jalen Wilson, is not going to play. And their center, David McCormack, who has slowly turned into probably their most important player over the season. He has a questionable tag. It's sounding like he's going to fly out and make the game, but obviously he hasn't really practiced much. And then they also have a bench player that has the same questionable tag as well. So a lot of question marks on the Kansas side. And this Eastern Washington team is good. They can score. They're one of the better mid-major offensive teams in the country. They got 5 guys that average over 10 points per game. Early in the season, they played both Washington State and Arizona and took them both down to the wire. It was almost a 1-possession game at the end. And they got this center, Tanner Groves, that can really, really play. He's really good touch around the rim and he can step out. A lot of their offense runs through him. So if McCormack can't play and kind of neutralize him a little bit, Kansas might be in a little bit of trouble. Right now, I'm just going to assume McCormack is going to play. And the problem with Eastern Washington is that they really can't guard anybody. And I think Kansas will still have enough firepower to get by them. But if there's still a little bit of wackiness going on with not being able to practice, some guys being out, Eastern Washington could make this a close game. But I still think that Bill Self figures out a way to win this game. But it could be pretty close. But I'm still going with Kansas.
Okay, Kansas moves on, but we have to watch. Maybe we get some information there that that 10.5 could get pretty interesting as we get closer to tip. Sounds like. All right, next the Oregon Ducks, 5.5 point favorites against VCU Rams. This one should be fun. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this one's going to be a lot of fun. It's always going to be fun when you get VCU because they play such a unique havoc style defense where they try to pressure and force teams into turnovers the whole game. And they have a really fun player his name is Nashon Bones Highland, where he just is a nightmare for opposing guards. He hounds them the whole game, and he can really score the rock as well. But this VCU team, outside of him, they're very sloppy on offense, and they turn the ball over a lot. And I just think this matchup with Oregon is not very good for them because Oregon has the guards with Chris Duarte and Will Richardson to be able to handle that pressure. They're not going to turn it over that much. And Dana Altman will prep this Oregon defense. They like to switch defenses a lot. They play a lot of weird zones along with man-to-man. They press sometimes as well. I think they'll be able to – VCU is going to have a lot of trouble scoring in this one. And another thing VCU does is they gamble a lot on offense, and I don't think that's a good recipe against this Oregon team. They like to try to block shots, which opens up the offensive glass. And my boy Eugene Amruri, who is a Rutgers transfer, he is going to clean up the offensive glass. He might have 30 this game, so I'm having Oregon move on.
All right, Oregon moving on. And we're going to wrap it up here with the Iowa Hawkeyes. Obviously, big favorites here, 14-point favorites against the Grand Canyon Antelopes. Nice run for Grand Canyon. It was a nice season, but do they have any shot of knocking off the Hawkeyes or even keeping it close?
Well, if you put the question in that types of terms, do they have a shot? Yes, they have a shot.
Okay.
Because we all know Iowa wants to work the ball in the post, get the ball to Luka. That's pretty much their whole offense. What makes Iowa so great is that Luka's a pretty good passer, and they have fantastic shooters around them. So they're really hard to stop. But Grand Canyon has 2 7-footers that may be able to give Luka a little bit of problems. They have Ashbourne Midgard, who's a Wichita State transfer, and they have the Italian stallion Alessandro Lever. Both these guys are pretty solid big guys that may cause Iowa a little bit of problems. And at the same time, Grand Canyon, coached by Bryce Drew, who used to coach at Vanderbilt, he's a pretty well-decorated coach. They like to slow things down and they're going to try to dictate the pace and just make the game as ugly as possible where Iowa wants to get up and down the court. So Grand Canyon does have the kind of scheme to slow Iowa down a little bit. I know a lot of people that I respect a lot in the industry are pounding the under on this game. So is Grand Canyon going to upset Iowa? No, probably not. But if you put it, can they do it? This is one of the 2-15s that if you're going to be crazy, matchup-wise, it's not that great of a matchup for Iowa. So, but yeah, I'm obviously going to have Iowa move on in this one.
All right. But I like it, though. There's the size. He's always, like you said, he's so skilled. He's really hard to double team because they have such great shooting around him. So,
sometimes not even 2 guys can guard that man. He's really that good.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to round of 32 here. We have the Gonzaga-Oklahoma matchup.
Yeah, so like I said before, Gonzaga right now, best team in the country. And Oklahoma not playing that great of basketball. They're kind of on my fade list coming into the tournament, so I'm going to have Gonzaga move on. I don't think they'll have that much trouble.
Yeah, Zags obviously undefeated. They basically win by double digits. I think like 23 straight. I read they are just they are cruising. And again, there's some NBA prospects on that squad as well, particularly Jalen Suggs, who's a lot of fun to watch. Then we got the upset special. We got the UCSB and Ohio matchup. Does Preston keep it going and really throw himself into the mix here as a top 10 pick?
He definitely could get this done, but for the same reasons I like Santa Barbara over Creighton, I like them over Ohio. Ohio kind of plays that similar, spread it out. They want to play a little fast. They shoot a lot of threes. They want to move the ball, which that's exactly what Santa Barbara kind of takes away from teams. So I think matchup-wise, Santa Barbara kind of has the same advantages that they have in Creighton, and they get the W here too and move on. Sweet 16 as a 12 seed.
Love it. All right, now we have the USC Kansas matchup.
Yeah, so this one is tough, just because of all the question marks surrounding Kansas. USC is definitely skilled enough that they can pull this off. They have the size to limit McCormack if he's playing. Kansas is not the same offensive team that they usually are. Their defense has improved and become very good, which is kind of why they're playing well at the end of the season. Their defense has improved, but they still have trouble scoring the ball. Because of all the question marks and the size, I'm going to go with USC to move on.
All right, true.
But as you can tell, I'm not in love with this USC team, especially because of their guard play. So it's just the reason I have them in the Sweet 16 is all based on matchups as of right now.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, it's very narrative based around, guard play in the tournament, but I think it is that way for a reason. Like we've just historically seen it play itself out with veteran teams and veteran guards and good guard play. So, all right, Oregon and Iowa. That one's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So I actually like Oregon to upset Iowa in this one. I think they have enough weapons talent-wise to be able to score with Iowa. And I think Dana Altman can prep for that Iowa offense enough to make it a little uncomfortable for them. Find ways to limit Luka. Obviously, if Iowa's shooting well, not many people, probably nobody in the country could beat them. But I think Dana Altman is a good enough game prepper that they'll have a good game plan. And we've seen Iowa struggle at times. I think they can get it done and move on with the upset.
Love it. Let's finish it out. We have Gonzaga, and Cinderella story so far for sure would be UCSB.
All right. So obviously, if you're going to run into Gonzaga, the Cinderella story is going to come to an end. So we're going to move Gonzaga. And I tweeted about this earlier in the week that I think Gonzaga has a pretty easy path to the Final Four, probably the easiest out of all the number one seeds. And a big reason why I think that is because I think there's going to be a lot of upsets in this region. So yeah, I have Gonzaga easily going to the Elite Eight. Yeah,
there are definitely some better 4s and 5s out there than Virginia and Creighton. So that's a good point. And then again, no 2-3 matchup at the bottom of the bracket for them. They have 6-7 matchup with USC and Oregon, a couple teams that are familiar with each other.
I have a little craziness going on in this region. But I kind of mentioned it before that I'm not really a fan of USC's guard play, and I think Chris Duarte and Will Richardson are the difference here, and have Oregon moving on to the Elite Eight.
All right.
The tough matchup. Yep, tough matchup against Gonzaga. Oregon has the chops to make it interesting. They've been really injured a lot of the year. Which is kind of why that their performances have been up and down, but they finally got healthy at the end of the season and rattled off a lot of wins in a row. I mean, they stumbled in the conference tournament, but they've been playing their best basketball recently. But still, I still think Gonzaga will be too much for Oregon here and have them going to the Final Four.
Love it. All right, Pacific Northwest battle to go to the Final Four, Gonzaga and Oregon.
There we go.
Hard to beat Gonzaga here, Mike. What do you think?
Yep, I have Gonzaga moving on.
There. All right, we got one done. Now, I thought this was going to be the volatile region here. We're going to move on to the East. And obviously with, the questions that Michigan has from a health standpoint, as a number one seed, been pretty dominant. I believe it is just Iowa, Illinois, and Gonzaga that are both top 10 offensively and defensively as far as some of the, advanced metrics go. And, those questions with Michigan, we still don't have answers to, but again, they have to be one of the favorites here moving forward. But they're going to play the winner of the Mount St. Mary's Texas Southern game. Texas Southern really short favorites there. What are your thoughts on that one,
Mike? So as far as the St. Mary's Texas Southern playing game, so Texas Southern is coached by Johnny Jones. If that sounds familiar to you, it's because he coached LSU during the Ben Simmons era. So he has some high major pedigree. Moved down after he got kind of booted from LSU, moved down to Texas Southern and it's kind of become transfer U over there. where a lot of high major talent that doesn't really work out goes down to Texas Southern. So you take a good look at their roster and you're like, wow, this team has a lot of talent. Yes, they do have a lot of talent, but the way that they play is kind of like going to the park and playing, where you're just kind of getting an erratic offense, attacking the rim a lot. And what Mount St. Mary's strengths are they're really good at defending the rim, and they're really good at defensive rebounding. So it kind of X's out all of Texas Southern's advantages that they have in their conference, where they just out athletic guys, and Mount St. Mary's has these two 6'9", 6'10" guys that really defend the paint really well. So I think schematically Mount St. Mary's just matches up really well with this team. I actually think they should be favorites, so I'm picking the Mount St. Mary's side. And then they do have this 5'8" point guard who's a kind of a dynamo. His name is Damian Chung Kui. He's really tiny, so he might have a little bit of he might struggle a little bit with the Texas Southern length. But the guy can make plays. I think he makes enough plays for them to move on to play Michigan, who Michigan coming into the tournament at the end of the year before Livers got hurt. I was a seller of them. I mean, they've had a great year. They are so efficient both on offense and defense. They're very, very crisp. But I'm just not buying that they are in the same kind of category as the rest of these one seeds. So I was hoping to fade them. And then we got their best player, Isaiah Livers, injured probably for the most of the tournament, unless they make a really deep run. And now they become everybody's upset favorite, which kind of makes me upset. But just for looking right now against Mount St. Mary's, Michigan moves on. There's just too much.
Yeah, still enough talent to get past that first one.
Right.
All right, next 8-9 line, LSU against the Bonnies. LSU 1.5 point favorites here. LSU, I believe, was they popped up on my radar before the season started because I believe you bet them as a future.
I did.
Win the whole thing.
I did. Yeah, I got them at 70-1. I was actually analyzing my futures this morning. I posted a thread on Twitter. And right now in the tournament, they're still 70-1. So no gain or loss value there on that future bet. I mean, LSU has all the freaking talent in the world, especially on offense. It's probably right up there with Iowa if they want it to be. But that's one side of it. Second side of it is defense is optional if you play on this team. And in the tournament, you have to play good defense in order to advance. I mean, LSU's been playing really, really well of late. They have three guys that are awesome offensively. Jamarcus Smart, Trendon Watford, and Cam Thomas can hit shots. He's probably the most NBA-ready scorer in all of college basketball. He can hit shots from the parking lot. And LSU is going to really want to make this game fast and score at will. But on the other side, you have Bonnies, who very experienced team, very well coached. What they can do is frustrate LSU and dictate the tempo and take very long on offense, where LSU has no interest in playing defense. So if they take a lot of time off the shot clock, LSU's defense will break down and the Bonnies will get easy buckets. They have one of the better point guards nobody knows about in the country in Kyle Lofton. He's a stud. And they all play together for a very long time. They have a really tight group of juniors. If you look at KenPom's metrics, they're 30th in the country in minutes continuity. And like I said before, they're very well coached. LSU is probably running into a very bad matchup with the Bonnies just because of the way that they can play and not allow LSU to make this a game that they want to play. So because of that, I'm going to pick the Bonnies to move on.
Well, yeah, Bonnie's a little bit ahead of LSU in the KenPom metrics as well. You can see there too. Bonnie's play slow, and LSU looks like they can score with anybody, but it looks like a bad matchup. We love that continuity for sure in the tournament. So great call there. All right, a couple teams that made some noise, one for the wrong reason and one for the right on the weekends. Colorado had been trending up. They are still 5-point favorites here against the Georgetown team that had a outstanding Big East tournament. Obviously looked like some of the Hoya teams that you and I probably remember growing up back in the days. What are your thoughts here? Colorado, Georgetown.
Man, was that great to see Patrick Ewing in the Garden take that team to a Big East championship and an auto bid. That was awesome to watch. But yeah, Georgetown is playing really good basketball right now, especially defensively. They've always had, their strength has been their length, and their length is finally translating on the defensive end, which is causing them to play really good basketball. But at the same time, this is starting to become one of those trendier upset picks, and I just don't see it because, okay, Georgetown's playing very well right now, but like looking at their full body of work, they finished like 8th in the Big East. The Big East is in kind of a down year this year, to be honest. And they run into this Colorado team who is very disciplined. They have an elite point guard in McKinley Wright, and they deal with length pretty well. They have 2 wins over USC, who we just talked about is very, very long and athletic in the front court, which is kind of Georgetown's strength and how they, beat up on a couple teams in the Big East tournament. Colorado seems to deal with that length pretty well. And I really like that I'm going to be in the minority picking Colorado here. So I'm picking Colorado to move on.
Love it. Everyone loves what they just saw last, and Georgetown is that. And sometimes this is a good time to be contrarian by picking the better team and the favorite. So good opportunity here to do so. The 4 line here is Florida State's 10.5-point favorites against UNC Greensboro. There is annually a ton of talent on Florida State. They produce high-level, versatile, switchable NBA prospects, and I think that they have a bunch more this year. What are your thoughts on this one?
You're exactly right. And it's funny because I did the write-up for our tournament guide on FSU, and the way I described FSU is I described Coach Leonard Hamilton as like the Night King, and all he does is summon all of this army of whites, of these athletic, switchable guys that just pressure and attack you the whole game until you suffocate, right? That's exactly how Florida State plays. That's how they've been playing for the last few years, and has led to pretty deep tournament runs the last couple of years. And they have as good a team as ever to do it this year as well. I absolutely love this team. A question coming into this year for Florida State was, is their offense, they lost a lot of offensive production last year, so is their offense going to be their weakness this year? And it hasn't been. They're ranked 10th in the country in offensive efficiency, which is wild to think about that a Florida State team does that. The one thing that they do struggle with, especially recently, which is why they lost that Georgia Tech game, is turnovers. And UNC Greensboro presses and forces a lot of turnovers, which is interesting. This matchup kind of reminds me, this UNC Greensboro team kind of reminds me of that John Morant Murray State team where they won a game, I think in the first round against Marquette a few years ago. But then they ran into Florida State, which everybody thought they had a good chance against Florida State, but Florida State was just way too much and blew them out. I kind of think this is the same situation. Greensboro is going to have to force maybe 25 turnovers and get a lot of points off of those turnovers to be competitive in this game. If they don't, then they're not going to be able to score, and Florida State's going to run away with this one. I have Florida State advancing. I do want to mention for people who aren't really familiar with Greensboro is that they do have a really, really bright upcoming coach that I think is going to end up taking over Roy Williams' spot in the future when he ends up retiring for UNC. Wes Miller, he used to be a bench player, come off the bench, shoot some threes for North Carolina back in the day. He's a very, very good coach. You're going to see as long as he's in Greensboro, you're going to see them come out of that conference a lot. And they have a point guard, Isaiah Miller, who is one of the better mid-major point guards in the country. He's really, really fun to watch. Florida State's going to fluster him a little bit, but he's somebody to keep your eye on, especially on draft boards.
Love it. Yeah, 2-time SoCon Player of the Year. I don't think that happens by accident. He's got to be able to fill it up a little bit. I haven't watched a lot of him, but I've heard of him. So, yeah, I remember Wes Miller. He was on I think it was the 05 title team. He was on there with Carolina. Like, he's been around.
Yeah, he was definitely on the one title team. I remember. I have actually a really funny story about that, but I don't want to waste some time on here. I want to keep it to the bracket.
All right, we'll save it offline. The next one is we got another play-in game. We have basically 2 of the all-time juggernauts meeting in a play-in with Michigan State against UCLA. Michigan State 2.5-point favorites here. Winner gets BYU. What are your thoughts about this group of 3?
Yeah, so it's very, very weird to me that the committee ended up putting Michigan State in a play-in game. I don't think they deserved it, and it seems like a ratings grab for the first 4, just to have Michigan State a big name in there. As far as their matchup with UCLA, both these teams are playing very different basketball right now, whereas Michigan State has kind of found their stride late in the season, and they won, I think, 3 of their last 5 games against the top of the Big Ten. They beat Ohio State, they beat Illinois, and they beat Michigan. Whereas UCLA has kind of been a train wreck in the second half of their conference play, where they've lost, I think, 6 of their last 7. I don't have the metrics in front of me, but they haven't performed well at all, and they're playing their worst basketball this season. What this game is going to come down to is it's going to be a pretty ugly game, and it's going to come down to late shot clock playmaking. And UCLA has more kind of morphed into a isometric kind of Johnny Juzang and Jules Bernard kind of taking contested mid-range jumpers way too much for my liking at the end of shot clocks, where Michigan State is kind of playing a little better offensively. And I just have much more confidence in the emergence of Rocket Watts, and you have Aaron Henry and Joey Hauser that can score in the late shot clock. It's going to be an ugly game, but I just trust Michigan State, especially because it seems like they've kind of formed a better rotation, right? Because the problem with Michigan State all those years, they've been playing, I don't know if you watched them play, Ryan, but they play like 15, 16 guys all year. And it's like, how does this team get any sort of rhythm or continuity together if you're playing so many guys? And I'm starting to think that, does Tom Izzo do this on purpose just so he can look like a wizard and actually have a steady rotation in March just to fit his narrative that he's the man in March and can win in March? I don't know. It just seems like that to me. So, I mean, Michigan State's playing much better basketball in March to fit the March Izzo narrative. So I have them moving on.
Yeah. Hockey line changes where you're just subbing in groups at a time.
Exactly.
You can't find any rhythm. No one knows their role. Like those things don't typically work out.
Yeah, that's been the struggle with Sparty all year. And it seems like they're kind of figuring it out now, which makes them a little dangerous. But if they do move on them to match up with BYU, I initially had Sparty moving on, but I dug into this a little deeper, and BYU kind of has the advantage at every single position besides the small forward position. I think Aaron Henry on Michigan State is the only advantage that they have. But BYU otherwise, they have better guard play, they got better interior play, and the way to beat BYU is to break them down off the dribble offensively. And Michigan State doesn't have any guards that can really do that. So if Michigan State moves on to face BYU, I have actually BYU moving on.
All right, with the Cougars there, we know they've pretty good game against Gonzaga early in the season too. So we know that they can hang at times when they're playing their best ball. All right, Texas, obviously coming off of a nice little conference tournament victory there. 9-point favorites against Abilene Christian. What are your thoughts about here?
Yeah, so Texas is another team I have a nice little future on. And it's nice to have the future on as in the 3 seed. But this is another Cutri upset special brewing right here. So I'm not buying that they're playing that well of basketball right now, because they did get a free win against Kansas in the Big 12 tournament because the game was canceled because of COVID. And I didn't think they played that well against Oklahoma State.
They didn't. They tried to give it away
in the final. Late. They tried to give it away late, and the reason they won that game was because Jericho Sims absolutely dominated them in the paint, which is Oklahoma State's biggest weakness. So we'll get to that. But that they don't have that kind of advantage here against Abilene Christian. They have the 7-foot monster Colton Cole inside. And another weakness of Texas is that they do have good guard play, but their guard play is very inconsistent, and they make boneheaded plays a lot, and they turn it over a lot. And newsflash is that Abilene Christian forces the #1 amount of turnovers in the country, in the entire country. It kind of has the makings of that Stephen F. Austin team that made that run a couple years ago that pressed and forced a lot of turnovers. This Abilene Christian team kind of has the same makeup of that team and can beat a Texas team. The Texas, I mean, I really like the spread. If you had a gun to my head, I think Texas pulls it off. But, if the guards can't take care of the ball and Sims gets into foul trouble against Cole, Texas is going to be in for a world of trouble. And just to sprinkle on top of that, Abilene Christian's coach used to be on the same assistant at Abilene Christian. He used to be assistant coach with Chris Beard, who coaches Texas Tech now and played Texas 3 times. So he could be getting a little bit insider information from Chris Beard. It just kind of comes full circle. So I think that Abilene Christian is enough of a matchup problem for them to pull off this upset, and I have them moving on to the next round.
Abilene Christian, definitely take the 9 points. Yeah, if you're betting that one, it sounds like there's enough of a worry there. I love it. All right, UConn in Maryland on the 7 and 10 line there. We have UConn. It's got a little steam. They're up to 3 now in most spots against Maryland. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I'm not really buying the steam as far as 3 points. And it's funny because, I'm looking throughout Twitter and I'm seeing people in the industry and everybody's like, yeah, UConn automatic win. They're moving on. I agree. I am going to pick UConn to win this game, but the matchup with Maryland is not easy for them. Maryland's not that bad of a team, especially defensively. They've been playing much better defense this year. And you have one of the better defensive players in the country, Daryl Morcell, is going to guard James Bouknight, which everybody loves UConn because UConn has a great lineage of guards who can take over the game. James Bouknight looks like the next one in line, and James Bouknight is phenomenal. But Maryland has somebody who could slow them down. They play really good defense. UConn's strength is on defense is their rim protection, which Maryland does not score inside. They score all of their shots usually from the perimeter. They're one of the highest for 3-point as far as shot attempts. They take a really high percentage of 3-pointers. So the question is going to be, can they get hot? If they get hot, UConn's in a lot of trouble. But banking on somebody to hit a lot of threes, I don't know if that's a good betting or strategy. So I am going to be taking UConn. UConn is playing a little better basketball at this time. They're winners of 5 of their last 6. They do have the X factor in James Bouknight who could take over. But I think I am going to be on the Maryland side betting, especially since it got up to 3. But, UConn just has a little more of a path to victory than Maryland does, but it's going to be closer than people think.
Yeah, Maryland is a tough team from what I've watched a couple of times this year, but Bouknight is the guy too. Just again, watching the future prospects is definitely the guy to zone in on in this one. Number 2 seed Alabama, 16.5-point favorites against the Gales from Iona. Obviously, Rick Pitino here, probably getting a little bit of love for Iona, but this Alabama team is. I think is going to be a problem here. Be interested to hear what your thoughts are on them.
Yeah, it's just a really terrible matchup for Iona, to be honest. The story here, like you said, is Rick Pitino coming back to the tournament. This is the 5th team he's ever taken to the tournament, which is a lot. And he does have a kind of unique, legendary, I should say, defensive pressure scheme where he makes guards really uncomfortable, but Iona just doesn't have the talent or firepower to keep up with Alabama, and Alabama should win this pretty handily.
Alabama plays fast. They play a lot of D. They're going to be a problem for everyone here. All right, Michigan against the Bonnies. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is an interesting matchup because I do think the Bonnies have enough talent to compete with Michigan here, but I do think that Michigan will strive in a lower tempo game and be able to execute much more efficiently than the Bonnies can. So even without Livers, I still have Michigan going to the Sweet 16.
And it seems pretty likely they wouldn't have Livers here. I feel like it would be best case scenario. They maybe start to get him back after this, and even that seems definitely up for grabs. Colorado, Florida State.
Yeah, so I mentioned before I am riding high on the Noles, and I think they're just top to bottom talent and pressure will just be too much for Colorado to handle. Outside of McKinley Wright, they don't have many ball handlers, so he would have to have a major performance to pull that win out, and I just don't think it'll be enough.
Yeah, late in the conference tournament, it looked like they needed anyone to even bring the ball up, and they were just looking for Wright. The clock running down. They didn't have anyone willing to have the ball or make a play. So it seems like that could come back to bite them. All right. Next we have BYU against Abilene Christian.
As much as I want the Cinderella story happen in this region as well, I think BYU's guard play is just a little poised enough to be able to handle the Abilene Christian pressure, and I actually have BYU going to the Sweet 16, which I think will give me a little bit of a good leverage spot because I don't think a lot of people will have that.
No, I think that's a good call because you get, like you mentioned, some of that Izzo mystique. You have people having them out in the front, first line, and then Texas obviously coming off of winning their conference tournaments. They're going to be pretty popular as well. And because there's so much openness with the questions around livers, I think Texas is kind of a trendy. Texas, Alabama are very trendy to get to the Final Four here. So UConn, Alabama here to wrap up the round of 32.
Yeah. So my thoughts on this is I've kind of going through the field. I've been a little bit of a seller of SEC teams. And the reason is because the SEC kind of makeup of their teams is high octane, high tempo, run and gun, don't play much defense. I mean, granted that Alabama does have the second best from efficiency standpoint defense in the country. But they're not really used to a grinded out type of game that UConn will provide them in this type of game. And, I'm always going to go back to the thing in March that helps you win games and you look at this, if you look at teams in the past that have been successful in making runs in the tournament, it's three things that stick out, right? Number one, it's guard play, because I don't care how good you are. I don't care how good like Gonzaga is. They're not going to blow out every team, right? You're going to get into situations where it's going to come down to a one possession game and you need guards to make plays at the end of the games to win. So, you look at, Jalen Brunson, you have Marcus Page, you have Kemba Walker, guys that are just bringing their teams deep into tournament runs. Guard play is evident in all of these teams. Number two is defense. You look at the last 10, 12, 15 national champions, they've never ranked outside the top 15 in Ken Palm's defense efficiency metric. So that's a good stat to remember.
Good.
And number three is coaching, right? You look at the past coaches, Jay Wright, Tony Bennett, you got Roy Williams, Coach K. Like it's always big name coaches that make the deep runs. And it might not be that important in the NBA, but it's certainly important in college. I just think that for this matchup, you have a bona fide stud in Bouknight that could take over at the end of the game. And I think UConn's going to make Alabama uncomfortable enough in a grinded out type of game that they're not used to. And they had a matchup with Clemson earlier in the year, which Clemson, I'm very low on Clemson, but what do? They play good defense and they grind it out. Alabama had no chance in that game. They kind of got smoked a little bit. So I'm a little worried about them in this matchup, and I actually have UConn moving on.
Ooh, all right. Love it. UConn advancing. And we got, I think I know where this one's going here. We got Michigan, Florida State here in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, if I didn't make it obvious before.
Well, I mean, you want to fade one team, and you're all about the other. So this is all right. So we
don't have to get much deeper into that. I have Florida State moving on to the Elite Eight here.
Florida State, and then the BYU UConn matchup here. This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, this one will be very interesting. And I actually have. I think Bouknight will be the difference, and the rim protection will be the difference. And I have UConn moving on to the Elite Eight to play Florida State.
All right. I have a feeling that I know where this one's going here. We got Florida State moving on.
Yep. Right when the bracket came out, I tweeted out Noles to the Final Four, sticking by my word. Leonard Hamilton and the Noles, Raekwon Gray, Scotty Barnes leading them to face Gonzaga in a rematch from 2 years ago. All
right. I love it. So we got our first Final Four matchup set, Gonzaga and Florida State. Let's move to the South. We have Baylor Bears, massive 26.5 point favorites against the Hartford Hawks. Baylor is we got kind of robbed of that Baylor Gonzaga game early in the season. It was going to be a lot of fun. Be interested to see how Baylor continues to profile here. Man, they can absolutely fill it up. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I'm just going to get it out in the open here is that Baylor is my pick to win the whole thing. And I've watched Hartford play a bunch of times this year. They have one player that can really generate any offense.
First of all, no one else you're going to be listening to this week heading into games has watched the Hartford Hawks a lot of times. So I'm just putting that out there to contextualize the analysis that you're getting here. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
That's really funny you bring it up because I'm sure people are watching this and they're like, what
No
the heck is this
chance,
guy
man.
talking
No
about?
No one's watching the Hartford Hawks, dude. Unless you live in Connecticut, even then you're probably not.
Yeah, they're like, what the heck is wrong with this guy? But
Yeah, they're watching
yeah,
UConn.
I watched him play a couple times this year, and they have one guy, Tracy Carter. He's a Marquette transfer. Is really the only guy who can generate any type of offense for their team. They're really defensive-minded team, but they'll, even being a solid defensive team, they're going to have no chance stopping these Baylor guards. This three-headed monster is just too good. The thing I want to mention about Baylor is that before they went into COVID shutdown, they were the third best defensive team according to KenPom in the country. And then coming out, we all know that they sort of struggled and they're really not playing that best of basketball right now, which has a lot of got people off of them. They're ranked, I think, all the way down to like 33rd in defensive efficiency, which if you go back to my point before, you look at teams that made a run and won national titles, they've all finished within that top 15. I think that that's an outlier just because they've struggled coming out of COVID, and I think they're going to be able to put it back together on the defensive end. So yeah, I love this Baylor squad. I think they have the best backcourt in the country. I think they have one of the better coaches, the underrated coaches in the country. And I think their defense will get back to where it was pre-COVID pause. So reasons 1, 2, and 3, that's why I have them advancing.
Love it. And this next one's going to be interesting too. Carolina against Wisconsin. Carolina, short favorites here. Wisconsin, a 9 seed. They are 10th in KenPom metric. What am I missing here?
Yeah, so this one I've been going back and forth. It's very tough. I've been going back and forth all week on this. I know a lot of people are going to initially look at this. I'm sure a lot of people have seen Wisconsin play and have not been impressed. And a lot of people have seen North Carolina play recently, and North Carolina's looked pretty good recently. The strength of North Carolina, as everybody knows, is their front court. They have 4 mammoths that are interchangeable. Any 4 of them can take over the game at any moment. Wisconsin has struggled this year, surprisingly, to guard the interior. Not very typical of a standard Wisconsin team, but they've been destroyed inside. I do have a future on Wisconsin. I was very high on them coming into the year. Not looking that good right now. But Wisconsin historically does play pretty well in the tournament. They have big guys that are capable of stepping out and stretching these UNC bigs out to the 3-point line. Micah Potter and Nate Reavers can both shoot threes. And Wisconsin does have a better guard play, which you look for in March, with Demetric Trice, who is a primetime player, makes plays down the stretch. You can see my indecisiveness here.
It's a tough one.
I had North Carolina just like everybody else throughout the whole week. I did end up changing it this morning. I'm picking Wisconsin. I'm going against the public. I think they keep it close enough, and Trice makes enough plays down the stretch for them to advance.
All right, love it. That's going to be a close one to watch, and the line kind of tells the story there too.
Yeah.
Another one that is a trendy upset pick. We have Villanova, 6.5-point favorites against Winthrop. Obviously, the injuries to Colin Gillespie not being there is not really the Villanova team that everyone thought they'd have in the tournament, and Winthrop has got a little bit buzz on them. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so this is everybody's mother's favorite upset, 12-5 upset. I'm sure we're going to see brackets with like 60% people picking Winthrop here, and for good reason, right? Like you said, the narrative kind of smells like it's going to be a Nova upset in the first round. You have their best player and point guard, Colin Gillespie, injured, not playing. Justin Moore is kind of hobbled with an ankle injury. And Winthrop is one of the better 12 seeds we actually ever seen, metrically. They have a stud guard in Chandler Valjean, a 6'7" guard who's triple the double threat, great passer, great decision maker. They're deep. They play 10-plus guys, and in a good way, not in a bad way. They play 10-plus guys. They have the size to compete with a high major. They shoot well. They rebound well. They play pretty fast. So I understand the Winthrop love here. They only lost 1 game all season. But big but here is if Colin Gillespie played in this game, according to KenPom, Nova would be 10-point favorites in this game. Now they're only 6. I see some books going down to 5-point favorites. Is Colin Gillespie worth 5 points? No, he's not.
Yeah.
He maybe 2 points, but not 5 points. That's kind of ridiculous. People are discounting Jay Wright. Jay Wright's probably one of the best game planners out there, especially in tournament settings. He has 2 national championships in the last 5 years. Come on. And the one real strength of Winthrop is causing mismatches, just because they are athletic enough to, and like they have a 6-7 point guard where they can run, screens and cause a lot of mismatches. You can't do that against Nova. Nova is pretty switchable 1 through 5. And I just think that Jermaine Samuel and Robinson Earl are just going to be too much for this Winthrop team. And I have Nova winning this game. And I love the leverage spot I get here.
Yeah, it's a good call. I like Vaudrin. Guys with
He's
lefties,
really good.
Lefties with old
really
man
good.
game. That's speaking my love language. So
his basketball IQ is off the charts. He's really good.
Yeah.
But they play very similarly as far as the switchability and the way that they want to exploit matchups, because Nova kind of plays the same way. And if I put them side by side, Nova's the more talented team. So I'm going to pick Nova.
Yeah. I think even going back to the opening point around, game theory from a bracket standpoint, now even filling out just the one, I think when you have such an overwhelming favorite as far as upset pick goes, right? So everyone's talking about Winthrop. Unless you think Winthrop is moving on past the Purdue North Texas game, I think it makes a lot of sense to pick Villanova, who we think is probably the better team, probably has a better shot against Purdue anyway, unless you think that they're advancing to the Sweet 16. I think fading what everyone thinks is the popular upset, it just doesn't make sense. So the risk reward from what you get point wise in picking the first round upset is just not worth it in that standpoint. So
you're 100% right.
I'm with you on that one. Next, Purdue North Texas Green Machine here. Purdue 7.5 point favorites. Purdue's good. Obviously these Big Ten teams have a lot of experience from beating up on each other all season long. What are your thoughts on the Boilermakers?
This region has given me a headache the last couple of days, because I'm very indecisive on this game too, because North Texas is going to make this game close. They're a very, very dangerous team because they make the game ugly. They play at a super, super slow pace, and they can really cause a lot of problems for Purdue, especially interior on the inside, because Purdue runs majority of their offense through Trev Williams or even Edey when he comes off the bench. And we just saw North Texas kind of run through that Conference USA tournament, and they had a matchup in the semis against Louisiana Tech, who has 2 really good big guys, shut both of them down. And then they get one of the best big guys in the whole country in Charles Bassey on Western Kentucky in the final, and they shut him down too. So they can defend the paint and make things uncomfortable for teams. And on top of that, they're very good defensively. They have one of the better mid-major point guards in the country in Javion Hamlet, who can make plays down the stretch. So I know that North Texas is going to keep this game close. Are they talented enough to pull out the win? I don't know. But they do have a guy that can make plays down the stretch to pull out the win. Purdue is, I think, even at the 4 seed, a little underrated. Matt Painter is an incredible coach, and their guard play has been suspect all year, but they do have freshman Jaden Ivey stepping up recently and making a lot of plays, is making them a much better team. But I switched this pick so many times. I just think that since the game is going to be, I think the game is going to, I can't say the game's going to be close. I think the game's going to be very close. Grant McCaslin is a great rising star in the coaching world. I'm going to pick the upset just because of how ugly the game is going to be, and just increases the chances of North Texas being able to pull off that upset.
All right. Mean Green moving on. Next, we have the Texas Tech Red Raiders, 4.5 point favorites against Utah State. Obviously, some exciting talent on the Texas Tech side, some pedigree there that's obviously been in the Final Four and in the title game of late. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so this one, Ryan, is going to be really ugly. It's not going to be a fun game to watch. If you haven't seen Utah State play, they have an absolute mammoth in Neemias Queta down low, who is the best big man in the country, not named Luka Garza. He is insane down low and completely dominates the game. Texas Tech is not going to be able to score at the rim. On the other side, their guard play is not very good. And they even struggle to shoot threes. So I think they're going to have a lot of trouble scoring against this no penetration Texas Tech Chris Beard defense. And also Texas Tech is going to pressure their guards as far as on-ball defense. It's going to make it tough for them to get the ball inside to Queta. I just think that the game is going to be really ugly. Utah State's going to have a lot of chances to win this game, but I just think Texas Tech has more playmakers in the backcourt with McClung and Shannon to pull up the victory here.
All right. Texas Tech moves on. And Utah State has a guy named Brock Miller. We have a Brock Miller on our baseball squad here at FTN's. Different guy. I don't think our Brock is out there, hitting threes.
He's not raining down threes for Utah State.
No, I'll check with him after we record, just in case, just to make sure. This next one is fun. I got in on the total early because this one popped as far as two teams that love to play fast. Arkansas, 8.5-point favorites against Colgate, Patriot champs. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I have a little bit of bias in this game because one of the assistant coaches on Colgate was actually one of my assistant coaches when I played Division III college. So I have a little bit of rooting interest in this one.
Love it.
So it's from a watching perspective, I'm definitely pulling for Colgate, and my man Jordan Burns, one of the best mid-major point guards in the country. A lot of people might remember them. I think it was 3 years ago. He might have been a freshman or a sophomore where they gave Tennessee a little bit of trouble I think it was the first round, and Jordan Burns went absolutely bananas in that game. The guy can play. And like you said, Colgate is playing a lot faster this year than they typically do. They like to get up and down the court, which makes sense in conference play just because they're much more talented. But when you're going to try to play that way against Arkansas, probably not the smartest thing. Arkansas is going to have too much athleticism. They're going to be able to switch and put lengthy guards on Jordan Burns, make it uncomfortable. And I just think that a guy like Jalen Smith or Moses Moody can go off for 30 against this team. It's just a really bad matchup for Colgate. So I have Arkansas moving on.
Arkansas moving on. Sounds like comfortably as well. We know Baylor moves on because they are your pick to win it.
I think you missed two games on the bottom. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I missed the bottom. All right, so we got Florida, Virginia Tech. Not your typical Florida team, I guess. Trey Mann is a difference maker, but Hokies are pretty tough. They typically are. Florida barely favorites here in this one. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a little confused with the committee on this one. I think these two seeds should be switched. I don't see Florida 3 seeds higher than Virginia Tech. That makes zero sense to me. But I don't want to get into bracketology here. Let's stick to the matchup. Florida, like you said, is a different team this year. Their best player went down in a very scary situation early in the season. He collapsed in the middle of the game. Fortunately, he was okay. He does have a prior heart condition that kept him out. Keontae Johnson kept him out for the rest of the season, so they are down their best player. And it has forced a lot of the younger guys to step up. Sophomore Trey Mann, like you mentioned. They have a transfer in Tyree Appleby that has taken over a lot of the ball handling responsibility as well. And it's forced them into a really heavy pick and roll type of offense that relies on a lot of playmaking and really good play from their guards. And because they're so young and the continuity isn't really there, they're very inconsistent. They're kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde type of team, which is not the type of team you look for when you pick teams in March. Whereas Virginia Tech on the other side, Mike Young has done such a friggin' good job with this team. Their offensive execution is one of the best you'll see in the country. They aren't the most talented team, but they do have guys that stepped up a lot this year. And they do have a couple big guys that can make it very, very uncomfortable and force some mismatches down low against the Florida bigs, and Kiva Luma and Mutz that can step out and shoot some threes as well. Matchup wise, I think Tech kind of just handles Florida here, just from a matchup and execution type of standpoint.
All right, and you can get a little plus money there on the money line with Virginia Tech too. See what happens as we get closer to tip. And then how dare I skip Ohio State? Obviously a nice showing in the Big Ten tournament, taking advantage of the Livers injury against Michigan, and then showing up really nicely against Illinois there and forcing their hand. They are 16.5-point favorites against Oral Roberts. What are your thoughts on this one?
This game is going to be fun to watch. There's going to be points galore in this one. Oral Roberts can really, really score the rock. They have their offense kind of just runs through two guys, but those two guys are good. Max Abness, I think is how you pronounce his name. He leads the country in scoring, and they have a big guy down low, and Kevin Abenar, who is one of the better offensive rebounders in the country. These two guys are legit. The only problem is they play zero defense, and Ohio State's going to have no problem scoring. If Oral Robert goes through one cold shooting spell, they are in trouble and could get the doors blown off. But I think they're good enough to score with Ohio State. So if you're looking at the spread, I think it's 16.5 or 17. I am a little interested in Oral Roberts, but it's just not going to be enough firepower to keep up with Ohio State just because their defense is so bad. EJ Liddell might have 40 points in this game. But a big question mark for Ohio State is the health of Kyle Young. Not many people probably don't know who he is. He's their starting forward typically. He doesn't put up big numbers, but he is the exact type of player that helps you win games as far as setting screens, rebounding, getting loose balls. Kyle Young is a very important piece of this Ohio State team. He's been out in concussion protocol. So if they don't get him back and it's a little more serious in the tournament, that could be trouble for Ohio State.
Interesting. Okay. Some we'll have to watch moving forward for sure. All right. I already moved Baylor along there.
Okay.
Obviously they'll be able to score with no problem. Then we have, this is very interesting because I think this will be fairly unique. We talked about, Winthrop being kind of the chalk upset pick. And I think probably North Texas is not someone that's moving on past Purdue in a lot of brackets too. So what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, so I do think that North Texas can make this game ugly enough without good guard play from Nova to at least keep it close. And because of that, I think that Javion Hamlet, again, can make plays down the stretch. And I actually have North Texas moving on to the Sweet 16.
I love it. All right, Texas Tech and Arkansas.
So this breakdown is going to be similar to my UConn Alabama breakdown, where I think Texas Tech can make this game ugly enough that Arkansas is not comfortable enough because Arkansas wants to get up and down just like a SEC team typically does, where it's something that they're not used to seeing. And I have Texas Tech pulling off the upset here. Texas
Tech slowing it down, muddying it up. Something that traditionally Ohio State is like to do, Virginia Tech as well. What do you like here moving forward?
So I think this is going to be a really, really close game. But I just think that offensively, Ohio State is going to have too much firepower for Virginia Tech, and they're going to move on here.
Look out with Mike's picks when we get a little bit more information. May want to take Virginia Tech getting points there. It sounds like maybe depending on what that number opens up. Obviously, you don't want to speak out of turn. We don't know what the number are, so we don't want to move there too early. But back up top, Baylor. Does North Texas keep it close, or do they just get run out of the gym?
Baylor will just be too much for them. I have Baylor moving on.
And then we have Texas Tech, Ohio State.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be another one where Texas Tech is going to mucky it up. I really have a lot of confidence in Chris Beard, and I think that he can get it done and move on to the Elite Eight in a Big 12 matchup versus Baylor.
Yeah, I'll say two teams very familiar with each other. And I know we have Baylor moving on pretty confidently, or you think Texas Tech just kind of rides its wave and it makes this a contest? Obviously, familiarity there.
I think Texas Tech can definitely make this a game. But I just think the guard play is the difference. Jared Butler, Macy Ot, Davion Mitchell is just going to be too much for Texas Tech, for a lot of teams in this tournament.
All right, we got 3 of 4. Gonzaga, Florida State, and Baylor. We are waiting their opponent here from the Midwest. Obviously, very popular pick. Obviously, very popular in the FTN streets with Brad ringing the bell loud and often for the Fighting Illini. Kicking us off here, 22.5-point favorites against Drexel. What are your thoughts about Fighting Illini?
Just take the Illini, giving the points. Drexel, they kind of stumbled their way into the tournament. They're a very experienced team, but not a lot of firepower. And they're going to try to slow the game down, which I don't think Illinois is going to let them. And this game can get out of hand. Illini pretty easily in this one.
Illini rolls. This is one that jumped out when obviously the bracket came out with Loyola. They are 2.5-point favorites against Georgia Tech, who obviously showed up in a big way in conference play, making some noise there. Loyola is, again, another one of those teams you're looking at, KenPom. Loyola is 9 overall in KenPom's rating and, 8 here in the seeds. Obviously, not playing a ton of great teams in the Missouri Valley Conference, but what are your thoughts on this matchup? Should be fun.
Yeah, I mean, why do we get Loyola as an 8 seed here? The metrics have them as the 9th best team in the country, the best #1 defense in the country.
Yeah.
It's just a misseeding, right? I mean, I can see a 7 or a 6, but an 8, it just sucks because Georgia Tech is playing really good basketball right now. And matchup wise, I do want to mention that news did come out, I think this morning. Somebody on Georgia Tech tested positive for COVID. We don't know who. We don't know if it was a player or a manager or a coach. Unless I missed some information, but that's the only news I know now. So keep that in the back of your head. But the story here is going to be Georgia Tech kind of plays this weird amoeba defense that kind of causes teams that aren't too poised and turn the ball over a lot. And Loyola has the perfect weapon for that in Cameron Krutwig, the big man. You kind of think of him like Jokic from the Denver Nuggets. Just this big goof who is really, really high basketball IQ, has really, really good touch around the rim and can pass the ball. He should be able to kind of destroy this zone just from his IQ type of standpoint and find shooters. Obviously, Loyola is going to have to knock down shots to win this game, but I think they'll get enough good looks to have the advantage here. A lot of people are going to be looking at the matchup between Krutwig and ACC Player of the Year Moses Wright for Georgia Tech, and that guy is also a stud. But I give the slight advantage to Krutwig. If you look at KenPom's efficiency ratings, Krutwig rates much higher than Moses Wright. I think Krutwig's maybe the 4th or 5th best player in the country as far as offensive efficiency. A lot of people are going to know who this guy is if they haven't once this tournament starts. And their coach has said in interviews a couple times this year that this Loyola team is much better than the team that made the Final Four run a few years ago, which is a little scary to think about. So because of the matchup issues, I think Georgia Tech is going to need a huge game out of Jose Alvarado. And if they don't, Loyola is going to move on.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, metrics definitely back that up for sure. And I like the Jokic comp here. Is definitely a guy that they run everything through, similar to how Denver does everything there in Denver. So love it. We have Loyola moving on. Tennessee against Oregon State. You have Tennessee 7-point favorites, and Oregon State obviously on the backs of a great run in the Pac-12. Have vaunted themselves up into the tournament. What are your thoughts here with Tennessee's typically just a lot of size and depth and talent? They're also producing NBA guys pretty typically. What do you like here?
Yeah, so I do see this trending as an upset pick, which I completely disagree with. I think Oregon State is the worst 12 seed out of all the 12 seeds out there this year. And it just kind of sucks that their matchup against Tennessee because Tennessee just isn't an exciting team. In my write-up for the for the FTN guide, I kind of comp them to the Cheerios of the college basketball world. They're good for you, but they're just really bland. And they play 7 guys pretty interchangeably. Their starting lineup's always changing. They don't have one superstar. It's kind of whoever's night it is going to be their night, which is a little scary because you do need a little bit of star power in March. Like I said before, if the game comes down to the wire, you want somebody to step up and make plays down the stretch. But I just think in this particular matchup, Tennessee's defense is just going to be too good. They're just going to force Oregon State they're going to eliminate them ability to score at the rim and force them to hit jump shots. And Oregon State is not a great jump shooting team. And Oregon State is going to funnel everything to the rim. Tennessee does have guys like the freshman Jaden Springer, Keon Johnson. They can get to the rim and finish, and they have guys that can clean up the glass. I think it's just going to be too much. It's just going to be too much to handle for Oregon State here.
Good run for Oregon State comes to an end. Oklahoma State, who also had a lot of talk about their seeding here as well. They are 7.5-point favorites against Liberty. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think they're a little underseeded. They're everybody's favorite team over the last month because you had Cade Cunningham pulling up upsets left and right. And the guy is exciting. He's the number 1 prospect in the NBA draft. The guy can take over games late. And the good thing about this Oklahoma State team is that it's not just the Cade Cunningham show. They have a lot of other pieces that are really, really good and even make plays down the stretch. Avery Anderson has stepped up ridiculously over the last month. And people forget that Ice Likely he was picked to play in the USA summer team last year. He's that good. He might not put up the stats, but he does things that helps you win games. And their front court is pretty athletic. They're a little frail. I think Caleb Boone might be 200 pounds soaking wet. So they do get their biggest weakness is interior defense. But offensively, they get out. They're fast. They cause a lot of problems. It's not just the Cade Cunningham show. This team is really good. As far as Liberty, I love this Liberty team, but I just don't like the matchup at all for them. Liberty, they want to slow it down. They want to grind it. They want to control the pace. I don't think Oklahoma State's going to let them do that. They're going to make this a fast-paced game, and Liberty's just not going to have the firepower to stay with them. So I have Oak State moving on to the next round.
Yeah, if you don't know, obviously you should probably do if you're watching the show. Cade Cunningham, presumptive number 1 pick in the draft, just big guard, a lot of composure. The one thing that worried me watching them, and I don't know, obviously you have not watched the amount of Oklahoma State that you have this season, but when I watch against Texas in the Big Ten or Big 12 championship game, so a lot of standing around, especially in the second half, and waiting for Cade Cunningham to make a play. And also he felt like maybe a reluctant scorer in the first half. And sometimes you see that, especially maybe with young guards where they're trying to get their guys involved. And he's got to be aware that he can't allow his team to fall behind early. He might have to be a little bit more gas, hit the gas himself in the first half, not let them fall behind. And then there's got to be some movement, weak side or whatever he's doing. There's just a lot of like spread ISO stuff with him. And he can make up for that because he is so talented, but that's just not going to be good enough to move them forward. So I don't know if that was kind of a one-off, but it was definitely frustrating to watch and wanting to see. It can't be just this kid. They can't be that good if it's, everyone else is just standing, watching and make plays.
No, it's a good point. And Oklahoma State has gone down early a lot of games, which causes Cade to need to have big second halves and take over a little bit, that's where you see a lot of the standing around. And a big issue with them is that Cade's been getting in a lot of foul trouble the first half. And that Texas game, he had 2 pretty quick ones. So, that's something to worry about. But, if you look through their full body of work, there was a couple of stretches where Cade didn't play. And a lot of guys did step up and have the capability of taking over the offense. And it's just them putting that together and not getting down early and not avoiding foul trouble and having to play catch up, because that's when the offense gets a little disjointed, is when they have to play catch up.
Good call. All right. The next, this one's also moved a lot. San Diego State, 6th seed. They are now 3-point favorites against Syracuse, a team that a lot of people questioned, even them making the tournament. San Diego State opened up, at pick -0.5 in some spots, and then moved up. Obviously, familiar name with Syracuse, and we're familiar with Boeheim and the zone and all that comes with Syracuse. They're pretty sure just size-wise, they don't have the back line of the zone beefed up quite like they have in years past. Is that going to be a problem for him here?
It is, Noonan. It really is. So it's a great point to make, because Syracuse I'm seeing is a very popular, trendy pick just because of Boeheim's past success in the tournament. They went on a couple runs. A couple of years ago, they made it to the Elite Eight with Malachi Richardson. And it's because teams on short prep always struggle against a 2-3 zone with a lot of length that they don't see typically throughout the season. It's brand new to them. You can practice as much as you want to prepare you for it, but once you get into the game, it's a different beast, right? The thing about this Syracuse team is that 2-3 zone is not the typical monster that it usually is that you see from these Syracuse teams, right? And it goes back to my comment of teams advancing that play really good defense. The reason that Syracuse advanced as lower seeds in the past is because that 2-3 zone was really, really good defensive efficiency-wise, whereas this year it definitely is not. And the biggest reason is because, like you said, they're very thin on the front line, and they give up so many offensive rebounds. I'm a huge DFS guy, and all I've been doing all year is targeting big guys against the Syracuse zone, and I've been crushing. I've been printing money off of it. They had Moses Wright, who had like 30 and 20 against them. You had Mark Williams from Duke, who is not the most talented player, but he had like 20 and 15 against them. They just get absolutely destroyed in the paint. San Diego State is well coached enough. They have a couple guys. They got Shackle who can hit threes. They have Mensah down low who can gobble up offensive rebounds. And then they have this 6'6" bowling ball, Matt Mitchell, who can cause problems from anywhere on the court. Syracuse has been playing a lot better recently, and especially offensively. And it's probably actually one of the better offensive Syracuse teams we've seen in a while. But for me, the difference is going to be defense, and I think San Diego State's going to get it done.
All right. Aztecs move on. Next, we have 3-seed West Virginia Mountaineers, 12.5-point favorites against Morehead State. Morehead State's been on fire. It's got them in the tournament, right? 19 of the last 20, which is, I believe, the most wins in Division I since the calendar switch. Do they have a shot here?
Do they have a shot? Yes. It's because they defend pretty well. And West Virginia is one of the more inconsistent teams. But at the same time, Morehead State doesn't really have a true point guard, and they turn the ball over a lot. And West Virginia guards do have the capability of pressuring you, forcing you into turnovers. A really interesting matchup is going to be freshman big man from Morehead State, Johnny Broome, who's an absolute beast down low, go against Derek Culver. That's going to be a battle of who's going to stay out of foul trouble. Both those guys are really good. It's going to be fun to watch. But I think West Phil's guard play is going to be the difference, and they move on. But they could have a little bit of problem with Morehead. It's not going to be a cakewalk for sure.
Oh man, I think we got some bias coming out next here. you played your hand on Clemson earlier, and then you flashed me a Scarlet Knights jersey that you're rocking right now. We have, they are 1.5-point favorites against Clemson, another team that everyone kind of feels, not that they shouldn't have been in, but also pretty popular buzz around them being misseeded as well. And sounds like you agree.
I do. I do think Clemson is overseeded. But the fact that they get Rutgers has me a little excited. I'm a Jersey boy, so I'm gonna root for Rutgers. My wife went there, and I've been to a bunch of Rutgers games the past 5, 6, 7 years. But the story of this game is gonna be terrible. This game is gonna be awful. If you're not gonna watch a game, don't watch this game. Both teams want to grind you out. They're gonna play defense. They can't really score at times. And I think this game is going to be really, really close and come down to the wire. And the difference is going to be Geo Baker for Rutgers, because the best player on the court is going to be Amir Sims for Clemson, and he's a big guy, whereas Rutgers' best player is Geo Baker, who his stats might not show it, but he's definitely the most important player for this Rutgers team, and he has made many, many game-winning plays in close games down the stretch throughout his career at Rutgers to make me think that if this game is close and I have to pick a side, I'm going with somebody who has he kind of has that clutch gene, right? Not many players have it. And Geo Baker is somebody who does encompass that clutch gene and can make the play or the shot down the stretch to win the game. And I think that's the difference. The only thing that really worries me is that Rutgers is one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the country. So if this game does get close and they get fouled, it's going to be scary. Nothing's going to be safe. But I think Geo's the difference. I may be biased, but I'm picking Rutgers.
It's pretty measured, though. I'm going to be honest. That wasn't too bad. It was toned down for sure. We'll see what happens in the next round. Houston, 20-point favorites here against Cleveland State. Yeah, I mean, Houston was a team that looked like they were going to have a nice shot last year, and obviously things got cut short. But running it back with a few of the same guys, what are your thoughts about them here?
Yeah, so that 20 points is not enough. I think Houston absolutely demolishes this Cleveland State team. Don't get me wrong, this Cleveland State team has had a really good year. But if you look at KenPom's metrics, they are the luckiest team in the country, number one. And what they do on offense is they have a really downhill kind of attacking-based offense that attacks the rim, and that's exactly what you don't want to do against this really physical Houston defense. I really love this Houston team. I've loved them and backed them a lot in the tournament the last few years. I've been a little unlucky, I think, because the way they've gotten bounced is, 3 years ago, Jordan Poole hit that like Steph Curry shot on Michigan to knock them out. Yep. Lost a lot of money on that game. And then last year, or 2 years ago, I should say, I can't remember if it was Kentucky or Auburn, but Houston was up with the ball with like 30 seconds or a minute left, and something crazy happened. Somebody made a play. It might have been Auburn, where Bryce Brown hit some crazy shot. And bounce them. I think it was in the Elite Eight. So they've had their chances to have deep runs. It just hasn't worked out for them. And I'm still going to back them. I love Kelvin Sampson's system. I love their guard play. I love their defense. I'm a big Houston backer this year.
All right. Now moving on to the next round here. It's going to be a really good one. Better than it should be for Illinois' sake. Second round matchup against Loyola here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Brad might kill me on this one. But I think it's just
hot take.
Really, really unlucky draw here for Illinois. And I think Krutwig could limit the thing with, Illinois is playing as good as basketball as anybody in the country. And they do have a stud in Ayo Dosunmu. But if you watch them play throughout the year, they do have defensive lapses, and they do turn the ball over sometimes. And they play their best when they're getting the ball into Kofi. And I think Krutwig could really handle Kofi and maybe even get him into foul trouble. And just for an 8 seed, this is just too much of it's too strong of a team to face in the second round for Illinois. And if I'm going to pick an early upset for a number 1 seed, I'm going to do it in this spot for Loyola.
Love it. So we definitely want to be looking out here to consider taking the points, because they're obviously going to be getting some here. And everyone seems to be on Illinois is a very trendy, I guess, anti-Gonzaga pick, it feels like, wanting to get chalky, but not all the way chalky, and picking a different champ. So that messes things up.
Which makes sense. They're playing really good basketball now. And a lot of people, I think, are going to be off Baylor just because they've been playing a little more poor basketball. So I see the reasoning behind Illinois. I'm going to go against the grain, though.
I love it. That's why you're here. Tennessee, Oklahoma State.
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned before, I'm not the biggest fan of this Tennessee team. I'm not the biggest fan of Rick Barnes as a coach. Don't get me wrong, he's done a great job with this Tennessee program, getting him back into national relevance. But let's not forget, Rick Barnes was trounced in the first weekend when he had Kevin Durant on his Texas team. So I'm always going to be Rick Barnes, a little skeptical of him. And I just think it's too much Cade, too much speed. And Oklahoma State, the country's going to want to see it, and they're going to have you in the Sweet 16.
Awesome. All right, San Diego State and West Virginia.
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned before, that this West Virginia team is very inconsistent this year. And San Diego State is the opposite of that. They're very consistent, very well coached, prep well. West Virginia is going to try to get into Culver. San Diego State has enough guys down low that could handle him in the post. I've been going back and forth on this all week, but I decided on having San Diego State come out with a victory here behind Matt Mitchell. Yep.
And I'll see where the homer line is drawn here. Rutgers and Houston. You talked up Houston pretty strong. Is it just to let me down and to go with your Scarlet Knights?
No, I wouldn't do that to you. This is going to be Houston by 30.
Houston in a big way. Can't make free throws in the tournament. It's going to bite you at some point. And yeah, that Houston team is fun to watch. All right, Loyola. Keep the dream alive. Like you said, you teed it up at the top, talking about this being better than the team that made the Final Four a couple years ago. Do they keep it going here, knock off Cade Cunningham and company?
I think they do. I think that Cade's run comes to an end in the Sweet 16. And, like you said, a little bit is too much standing around. And they're going to have a lot of trouble with that #1 ranked defense in the country. So I have Loyola moving on.
Loyola moves on. Love it. And San Diego State versus Houston.
So here I have, this is going to be a rock fight. So I think it's going to be Houston's going to struggle a little bit with the San Diego State team. But I think their guard play is just much better. You have Quentin Grimes, you have Jaron Giroux, who I think is one of the most underrated players in the country, as long as you can stay out of foul trouble. And even Marcus Sasser is a sniper from downtown. I mean, this Houston team is just too good. I like them, and I absolutely have them coming out of the region.
Love it. So that is Houston taking the last spot in the Final Four over Loyola Chicago.
Yeah, that's a fun game. If that matchup ever happens, Loyola Houston, that's a really fun game. But yeah, I have Houston.
It's not. She can drive back and forth. It's all in Indiana. It's not too far for Sister Jean this year. Moving on. All right. Very, very well delivered, well thought out Final Four matchup here. We'll start here with Gonzaga, Florida State.
Okay, so I'm actually going with the chalk here. Gonzaga playing the best basketball in the country. They're the best team overall. And I think they take care of this rematch where Florida State trounced them, 2 years ago? I think it's Gonzaga's turn to go to the title.
All right. And then we know you showed your hand earlier, going to be Baylor, Houston. Do you think, talk to me about the matchup a little bit.
That is going to be a physical game. But like I said, that three-headed monster that Baylor has, I think it's just going to be a little too much for Grimes and company. I love Jared Butler. I love Davion Mitchell, especially the way that they've defended the perimeter. I think Scott Drew gets it done, goes to the title against Gonzaga.
All right. And I teed it up at the beginning, not knowing this is where we would go. We were robbed of this game early in the season with the COVID issues, and we can get it for the national championship. Baylor, Gonzaga, and you have Baylor cutting down the nets and taking home the national championship, upending Gonzaga's perfect season bid at the goal line.
I do, and this is a tough one for me. Both these teams are head and shoulders throughout the whole year, right? I mean, like I mentioned before, Baylor had a little bit of a hiccup, but throughout the whole year, both these teams were head and shoulders above the rest of the field. I think they do enough to get to the championship game, and then as they match up, I just think watching Gonzaga play that they do have some periods of lapses where they turn the ball over, and they really need Jalen Suggs to be in the game for them to perform to their maximum peak, and he gets into a lot of foul trouble, and it's a lot of reliance on a freshman. It's a lot of weight to put on him. Obviously you have Nembhard come off the bench, who is really good, and he can run the offense as well. But just the consistency of the Baylor backcourt, I just have a slight lean to the Baylor side in this one.
Love it.
From a matchup standpoint.
not going to make you pick the tiebreaker final score. I don't want to dupe you here. This is, I'm not going to submit. This is your baby. So we don't want anyone, duping your exact perfect bracket here. Definitely some.
It's still subject to change, though. I'm tossed up on a couple games. I still have a couple days to dive a little deeper. But yeah, this
absolutely.
is my thoughts right now. Yeah.
So that wraps up the bracket part, Mike. So like you said, give yourself some grace. There's going to be a couple days you can change your mind, but let everyone know where they can find you and the rest of your stuff that you have out there already and what else is coming up for you before tip.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Mike Cutri CBB. I've been pretty active this week, just kind of giving my takes, giving a lot of free stuff out as far as some picks. I just gave out my against the spread picks for the first 4 games on Thursday. So definitely follow me on there. If you have any questions or want to just talk hoops, feel free to DM me, shoot me a message on Twitter. But majority of my stuff's going to be over at FTN Bets. I will be giving out 1 free pick per day on Twitter, but I'm going to be having much more in-depth detail on FTN Bets. I'm going to try to break down every single game and give a pick for every single game. And then obviously I'll be having my player prop picks, which have been really, really good this year, over 60 units in player prop picks. And then also all my against the spread picks will be up on the site. And then like Ryan, like you mentioned before, one of our big projects this year was getting that tournament guide to get together where, me, Brad Evans, and John Fendler, we like to think we're one of the better, best college basketball minds in the business, but, we put our heads together and broke down all 68 teams, going in depth, strength, weaknesses, players to watch, overall, how we feel if they think they can make a deep run or not. And you have that info for every single team in the tournament. And, even if you just need help filling out your bracket, or if you're watching games with friends and you just want to sound cool, definitely worth the $8 just to give that a glance over and a read. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for having me on, Ryan. I've had a ton of fun talking hoops with you, man. I hope our listeners at least learned something from my takes.
No way they didn't. I think you make a great point. The $8 just for the peer-to-peer tout issues, they allow you to sit and watch, hopefully watch safely, socially distance, depending on where you're on the country. Hopefully we can have something a little bit more, better than obviously what we had last year. We didn't have anything at all, but man, when you shoot your friends a text message and start talking about, the Hartford Hawks, because you read what Mike was doing and putting out over at the scouting guide, your other boys have no idea what's going on with Hartford. They didn't watch a single lick of Hartford all season. I don't even know where you find that on the television. You don't have to, I don't even know what you do, but you're up there.
It's searching a lot of illegal websites. That's what it comes down to. Illegal streets.
So don't forget to go over to FTN Bets. You can find the scouting guide that Mike's talking about. And again, he has been a prop machine. So some of those, we don't have those numbers currently, but you'll probably start to see some of that stuff trickle out, in the next 24 hours or so. And you're going to want to be a part of that. Mike is really plugged into player performance. I definitely feel like if you've hung out with us this long today, you picked up on that. His DFS knowledge kind of, trickles into that. And he has been printing money for us at the sites and any of our subscribers all season long with the props. So you're definitely going to want to jump in and have that next level detail. And again, player props are a best way to sweat those games too. You don't have to worry. You can worry about win-loss in your bracket. You don't have to worry about point spreads, but player performance is a little bit more predictable than the volatility of some of these matchups. So definitely want to head over there. If you are not subscribed, you can use the promo code Noonan for 10% off when you sign up over there. So for you on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You're going to be able to get reminders and notifications for all the great content here on the FTN Network YouTube page. We'll be back with another episode of Noontime next week. So for Mike, I'm Ryan. Thanks for hanging out with us.